What's up, everybody? Khaled Iwamura here from Quick Bite News, and I have the newly elected mayor of Burlington, Marianne Meed Ward, with us. How you doing?
Awesome. It's great to be here.
First off, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very newly minted. I think I'm about a month and a half on the job now, and I hope this feeling never goes away, but I pinch myself every morning and feel so lucky to be able to do this. So
that's awesome.
It's great. Yeah.
Cool. I gotta ask, how did you win? It's like
I worked hard.
I know you worked hard,
and I had a lot of people working hard with me. Yeah.
And I asked that because it's very rarely do you see an incumbent mayor lose.
I listened to the people, and more than listened to them, I agreed with their concerns, and they didn't feel, broadly speaking, that the council was hearing them, was making decisions on their behalf, and really they didn't feel that they were represented in the decisions. They didn't see themselves reflected in the decisions that were made. And so not only did they get a new mayor, there are 5 new members of council, and 2 other incumbents were beaten, including the mayor. So
wow.
3 incumbents changed. And it's a lesson to anybody in political life that you can never ignore your public. You can ignore them for a short period of time, but ultimately they have the final say. And they didn't feel heard, particularly on issues of development. And I had my ear to the ground. I was talking to people constantly and listening to the case that they were putting forward about reasonable development. And I agreed with what they had to say, and I represented that, and the election results reflected that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how are you going to listen to residents more then? Now, how are you going to open it up?
Well, there's lots of ways. I mean, I've always been very accessible. I use a lot of social media. I have town halls, both virtual, both online, telephone, in person. I make sure, this is my background as a journalist, but I make sure that people know what's happening. If you don't know what's coming at you, then you can't participate. And one of the reasons I first ran for elected office way back in 2006, I didn't win that election, but I stayed in because I knew it was something I wanted to do. I wanted to serve that way. But one of the driving forces behind me running in the first place was things that were happening in my neighborhood, and none of us knew until we'd read about it in the paper after the vote.
Okay.
Well, you can't affect change when you don't know about it beforehand. So that was something that I do in a monthly newsletter and meetings, and I'll continue that practice just to make sure that people know what's happening, but also that I'm very welcoming and truly do listen to the public. And they've changed my mind on issues over the 8 years that I've been a councillor before stepping into this role.
You're very vocal on downtown densification of downtown Burlington. Give us your thoughts on that, because I think that was a major part of your platform.
It was, yeah. The rushed downtown plan, we'd been working on our official plan for about 6 years, but the downtown from the beginning was never part of that, because we had undertaken a review of places to grow after it came out in 06, 07. We'd done a whole study in the city. This was before my time, but they looked at the intensification targets. They built those right into the official plan. And by 08, we had a fully compliant plan that took into account our share of provincial growth, but our share of city growth downtown. And so that was never on the table when we started our official plan review 6 years ago. And then all of a sudden, through a series of decisions, they decided, the staff kind of threw that into the mix, and then in about less than 6 months, the entire plan was changed downtown. There were some changes that were good, but for the most part, it added height and density, and it didn't need to.
Okay.
Because we are already taking our share of growth. We're already meeting our densification targets downtown. And so this was an unnecessary densification grab, really. And there was in my mind, there was no justification, there was no need for it. And it then starts to upset the delicate balance that is downtown. And we have a lot of historical buildings. People love the downtown character, the feel, that small town feel still right on the waterfront. We had a huge event in January 13th when Mike Taylor from Walk Off the Earth died. He was a Burlington resident, lived downtown. We had a tribute event in Civic Square, and people from outside Burlington were stopping me on the street saying, I love your downtown. I love this character, this small town feel, this, the historic buildings, and that's really special. And we have tall buildings downtown. We have a mix, but just because we have some doesn't mean there needs to be a high-rise on every block. And that's really where the official plan was headed for the east side of downtown and along the waterfront. So that issue really resonated with residents when I said, if I am successful in representing you as mayor, then we are going to get our official plan back. We're going to make some changes and be more reflective of what you see as the vision for downtown.
True. And we talked about it earlier, about how I want to move to downtown Burlington.
Yeah.
You never heard that in Mississauga, okay? You never heard that.
You'd be very welcome. You call me. We have the mayor's welcoming committee.
Oh my God, I'm so there. Okay, next year, 2020. Okay, that's my goal.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about Doug Ford. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can I just ask what you think of him?
Well, he's unpredictable right now, and so that makes our lives both interesting and challenging. And I certainly don't agree with him on some of the policy announcements that he's made. In particular, changes to Bill 66, which includes a whole raft of pieces of legislation which are very important, two of which are the Greenbelt Act and the Clean Water Act. That bill has been presented to allow municipalities to bypass those regulations effectively, and on Greenbelt to develop in the Greenbelt for jobs, not for residential, but for jobs. I completely, absolutely disagree with that, and have been very clear since that legislation was first introduced that not only will we, Burlington, not be availing ourselves of that, but we are encouraging other municipalities not to do this. And Burlington City Council also, all of us, all 7 of us, sit at Halton Regional Council. That's another thing that's under review we can talk about.
We will.
And that the region just last week unanimously passed a resolution saying that none of the 4 municipalities would use Bill 66, particularly on those 2 pieces of legislation, the Clean Water Act, which is intended to protect lives, and the Greenbelt Act. And in Burlington, this is very relevant for us because half of our land mass is rural. So we have a huge swath of land that's Greenbelt protected, and it needs to stay that. And this council has been very clear, and the previous council has been very clear that we are not opening up our urban boundaries for development. But the impetus behind this is, creating jobs and getting more businesses into Ontario, which is a great goal. But we currently in Burlington have over 400 acres of employment land that is sitting vacant. And it's along transportation corridors, which is exactly where you want growth. So we do not need in Burlington to open up any Greenbelt lands to speed the pace of business and to attract jobs. What we do need, though, is the province to speed their approvals when applications come forward, because all of our employment land that's adjacent to 400 series highways requires Ministry of Transportation of Ontario approval. And that permit process sometimes is very slow. Okay. So we need their help on that. On the regional review, that was another a gift that we just learned about. My take on that is don't fix what's not broken. Burlington Council is already the smallest council of any municipality, certainly in the GTA and possibly all of Ontario. We are a 7-member council for 184,000 population. And so when you look at the ratio of council member to councillor, we're number 3 in the province after Mississauga and Brampton. Okay. And they're much bigger municipalities. So we have 1 councillor for every 39,000 constituents. We're efficient. Yeah. At Halton Region as a whole, the 4 of us, we have the safest community in the country. We have tax rate increases that have been at or below inflation. We have high customer satisfaction in the 90s. We're running a very efficient and effective government. So my message is don't fix what's not broken. Don't mess with us. Don't force any change, because we are already a very efficient and responsive level of government. However, there are other municipalities I know that are looking for changes. Mississauga has talked about wanting to be single tier. So my encouragement to the province is focus on those areas where there may be problems or where there may be opportunities where those municipalities themselves are asking for a review. don't come after all of us that are just fine, thanks.
Okay. So
we're doing fine.
now, I know that Doug Ford met with a whole bunch of mayors that he liked.
Doug didn't. No, he wasn't at the mayor's meeting. That was John Tory convened that.
No, but wasn't there a meeting where he met with a bunch of mayors, like Bonnie Crombie, the mayor
before
of
Christmas?
Before
yes.
Christmas. Were you part of that?
I was not at that meeting. No.
Okay, no, you weren't. Okay.
Doug and I have met.
You have? Okay.
Yeah, he came to Burlington to when the hospital had their grand opening, having finally finished. Most of the work was done under the previous government, but the final stages were completed. So he was in town, and we didn't talk politics. We were there to celebrate the hospital, but he did invite me to come to Queen's Park, which I will do.
Cool. Nice dude.
He was very friendly.
Okay, all right.
He was very friendly. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. Just talking about Doug Ford again. I know he wants to upload the TTC so he can, I'm going to assume, create subways, right? Does Burlington need a subway to Toronto?
We need better transit.
Okay.
Whatever form that takes. The infrastructure just wouldn't warrant the cost of subways. I'm a huge believer in subways. I lived in Toronto for 10 years, never had a car, because you can do that in Toronto. And I rode subways. Streetcars worked really well too. Dedicated bus lanes work well. I lived in Ottawa for 8 years and went to university in Ottawa and used the bus system. So when you have dedicated transit bus lanes, they work essentially the same as streetcars and subways, because they separate you from traffic.
Okay.
Right? The nice thing about subways being underground is, first of all, they're not as affected by weather, but also they're not stuck in the same traffic jam as everybody else. So I think the key to transit, whatever method you take, is to separate it from the lanes of traffic.
Okay.
Mississauga's done that with the My Way. In Ottawa, they've done that. So I'm open to looking at different options, but I think the opportunity, certainly in Halton Region, that we're talking about is, our residents don't stop their bus trip at the border, so why don't we have or talk about a consolidated bus system and paratransit system for some of our folks who live in Burlington, but for whatever reason their doctor is at Oakville Trafalgar Hospital. They have to take 2 paratransit, and sometimes there's a huge transfer and hang time while they're waiting for that connection. That's not right. Yeah. So and that considerably adds to the length of time that a trip takes, and that becomes a disincentive to ever use transit. If it takes you 4 or 5 times what it takes to get in your car, most of us would rather not pay the time penalty, because we're all busy people.
True. Tell us about the Burlington Transit vision. What vision do you have?
We need frequent, effective, reliable service that gets people where they go, that doesn't take, as I said, an hour to get across town, where a car would get you there in 10 or 15 minutes. So what that means is adding frequency on our main lines, northwest and north-south and east-west, that way, not diagonally. 15-minute service ideally, or less. More of a grid system, so it's reliable and predictable. Some of our routes meander all over the place. They go through residential neighborhoods, which not only adds to the time, there are fewer and fewer people that want to use those meandering routes, and so your ridership is way down. And on those particular routes, so we get residents complaining that other than certain times of the day, rush hour in the morning and evening, that the buses are largely empty. So we need to send the buses where people are. We also need to make sure that the service is frequent, but we can't ignore the people that are off the main grid system. We have to find a way to plug those folks into our transit system. Is running a fixed route every 10 minutes through a neighborhood to pick up maybe 5 people in a day the best way to do it? I don't think so, but we still have to provide service to what's called low ridership areas. So there are some municipalities, I think Innisfil was the first, that have partnered with their local cab company. And so the cab company provides that service on a demand basis and plugs people into the network, takes them to the nearest bus stop. And we used to have that in Burlington. When I first moved to Burlington in 2000, I was still commuting into Toronto, lived in Tyndega neighborhood, and my house was 2 kilometers from the the nearest bus stop.
Wow. Okay.
But there was only about 7 or 8 of us in Tyndaga that commuted into Toronto. There was no way, and they had all those counts, right? There was no way they should run a bus every half hour or hour when for 7 people.
Yeah.
I got that too, right? So what they did is they had a dial-a-ride system. So we could call a cab and it would take me not to my destination, so fair enough. If I wanted to pay for a cab to do that, I could. But it would plug me into the nearest bus stop 2 kilometers away. And I would, catch by transfer or whatever, but that was the cost of a bus fare. Okay. So it's a very cost-effective way. So I actually think that as we go forward, we have to look back to see what worked. And that's one of those things that the concept of a dial-a-ride or an on-demand to service those low-rider areas, I think, is something we have to look at. And I know is being looked at, and there's general positivity not only in the community but on most of council around looking at those types of alternatives.
So this has been talked about in council then?
It's been talked about through the campaign. So
yeah,
I'm just reading people's literature and on the debate trail. So no, we haven't had a formal vote yet. That's still to come. But I think we're all looking at, where do we need to run conventional fixed route buses and do that and do it well. And then on the low-rider areas, how do we serve those in a unique way, thinking outside the box so that we don't have to run fixed route buses that may be empty for parts of the day.
Okay. So, and let's just say if, and I'm asking all the mayors in the GTA this, if Doug Ford tries to upload your transit system, would that be an issue, or is that, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm all about cooperation across municipal boundaries for those things that are really bigger than one municipality. Transit is one, affordable housing is another. So, but transit and transportation for sure. We see, like I said, our residents don't stop their bus trip at municipal boundaries. We have half of our people commuting outside of Burlington every single day to work. So they're going to Hamilton, a lot of them are coming to Mississauga and Toronto, and so to have 2 or 3, you cross 3 different boundaries. Say you're going to Toronto, you've crossed Oakville, Mississauga, and now you're into Toronto and Burlington. You're going to carry 4, different maps to see what bus route. I mean, the train works really well, and that's regionalized, right? So is there an argument for some regional transit bus service? Absolutely. I think we have to look at it. Will there always be a need maybe for some localized service for those truly, they're only within Burlington kind of trips? I think we can look at that too, but I think we do have to look at ways to make transportation and transit, aside from development, transportation, traffic, transit were the key. That was a number 2 issue in this campaign, because people are feeling the pinch of congestion and lack of good alternatives to getting into your car for a single person trip. So, and then affordable housing is a big issue. And again, we're not going to solve that as Burlington. We have people on an assisted housing wait list. Some of those people come from outside our borders. Some of our people apply to be in other cities if their families are there, or they have some reason to be in other communities. So it's very fluid, right? And so for those issues, we do need to work together. And I think the municipalities can figure this out. I don't support an imposed solution from the province. I think we have to work together with them and find solutions with them rather than having somebody in Toronto dictate to the entire region how it's going to be.
All right, so let's talk about the next 4 and 8 years as you being mayor. All right?
Let's talk.
Let's talk about 4 first.
Well, we have the official plan to deal with. We have climate change to deal with, and in Burlington, that affects us very directly. We had one of the biggest floods across the GTA in 2014. Got 90 millimeters of rain, which was actually more rain than Hurricane Hazel in a shorter period of time. The rain per minute and hour was worse than that. So, over 1,000 of our residents were flooded, and we know that we have work to do on green infrastructure, and that includes tree planting. We're losing a lot of trees in Burlington because of disease, but mostly development. And so we need to do a much better job of replanting. I have goals around setting a tree canopy and making sure that we take steps, meaningful steps, to not only arrest the reversal of our tree canopy, which is what's happening now. We're losing trees at a faster rate than we're planting them. And emerald ash borer is a huge part of why that disease is taking out almost all of our elm trees, like most municipalities. So, but green infrastructure can help with flooding because the roots absorb water, the leaves absorb water before they even get into the ground, and you have to leave space for them, which means you don't build developments right up to the sidewalk. So it's not asphalt to asphalt to asphalt. You have, green buffers, and we're learning in an era of severe weather just how important green space is. It's not just pretty to look at. It is critical green infrastructure. So that's something that we will tackle in the next 4 years. We're working on our budget right now, so we need to make sure that the budget is focused on services for residents that they've asked for. And that, for me, that means redirecting some of the administrative stuff over to frontline services for our community, trying to keep it in line with inflation. Some of the tax increases have been over 4% in the last 2 terms of council budgets. I did not vote for because A, they're too high, and B, they didn't deliver on direct services for residents. We need to get transit right. We talked about that. I have a passion for bringing more jobs to Burlington because so many of our people have to leave. And one of the things that we can do to solve congestion is if people don't have to leave the city and travel 40 or 50 kilometers every day on congested highways, if they can work right in Burlington, you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. They're local, they save time, and we get rid of congestion. So those are just some of the things that we're going to work on in the next 4 years. We have our council on many things. If you look at the election platforms of the 7 members who are elected, there's a lot of alignment on some of those things. So that's great. That gives me a lot of hope that when it comes to a council vote, we'll actually have some consensus to move these things forward.
Cool. I know Mississauga, Brampton, they have these passion projects that they say it's going to happen in 20, 25 years. Does Burlington have this passion kind of project that they're working on?
Well, that would be trees for me,
Okay.
the 25-year plan. I mean, a lot of the things we've just touched on, you can only take steps in the direction of. You can't solve it. But our tree canopy right now is 17%, or I should say the last time we kind of measured it, it was 17. But we know we've gone backwards even from that because of disease and development. A healthy tree canopy, according to any metric that you want to look at, is between 40 and 50%. Okay. So we're not going to get from less than 17 to 50% in 4 years, but we are going to take meaningful steps to put in place sustainable funding for rebuilding that tree canopy. So it may be a couple of terms out before we hit that target, but we will start that work now. Okay. Same with affordable housing. That's another thing that another huge issue that our residents talked about, because the land values in the GTA are so high. Building any kind of housing form now becomes very cost prohibitive, and so looking at unique ways to deliver more affordable housing to our communities. And there's a couple of tools that we have that I'm very passionate about. Making sure that people of all incomes can find a welcoming place in Burlington. You can do it through inclusionary zoning, which is a tool to require developers to build a percentage of affordable housing. You can do it by partnering with organizations like Habitat for Humanity. We did that in the last term of council, adding the largest townhouse development in the country was in my ward, in Ward 2. To get families into townhouses. They'd never done that. Their former model was single-family homes, so that was great news. And they pre-qualify people. You get a mortgage. It's a very unique model. So sometimes what government needs to do is partner with people that know their business rather than try and do it. And that's just one example. The other tool that we have is through Halton Region to buy units in new developments and then you have a wait list, pre-qualified, the housing wait list of people who are low income that get put into those units. So again, in my ward, the first time, I think the largest purchase that was made of units was 15 units in a major development by our GO station, the Burlington GO station, also in my ward. So there's a number of tools that we have to assist in different types of affordable housing. It's still a drop in the bucket based on the need, and this is where we need to work across the region and with the federal government, who started a national housing strategy to make sure that we get Burlington's share of funding under that model.
So you've recently went to a GTA Mayor's Summit that was put on by John Tory. Got to meet the mayors around, the GTA. How was that experience?
That was actually wonderful. John Tory was, he's a very gracious man. He's a very collaborative person, and so the 16 of us area mayors, the first time I'd met him, first time I'd met some of the other mayors around the table, he showed a real desire to hear everyone's voices, making sure that we could identify those things that as GTA mayors we could agree on and speak with one voice so that we're stronger together. I think he really understands that, and and he wanted to make sure that everyone was heard. So it was a great first step. We all agreed as mayors that we needed to do this more often, especially in the face of some of the things that are landing in our lap from the province, and regional review, of course, came up. That announcement came out as we were sitting in our meeting, so
Doug Ford knew what was going on. So.
He says he didn't, but nevertheless, right, it was a very timely meeting, and we thought, we've got transportation issues, affordable housing, climate change are the three that we all agreed are areas that no one municipality in this large GTA region is going to solve this. So we have to work together, and if there are things that we need the province's help with, we need to come together and speak with one voice to advocate to the province on that. So there's a high degree of consensus, I think, that came out of that meeting, and and our central message in the press conference after, I said, work with us, don't use a hatchet, maybe use more of a handshake.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. We want a handshake relationship with the province, a relationship of equals. We know our business locally, and we need their help on getting some things done, because they have a lot of the funding envelopes that fund some of our programs, but we have all the delivery implementation on our end. So we do the work and they give us the money, and we or the authority legislatively. So we really do need to come together and work together in a handshake kind of fashion.
Oh, the mayors are cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They are,
yeah. Okay.
No, it's a great, there's a reason why these folks are elected,
yeah,
right? They're
sure.
very thoughtful people. They care deeply about their communities and serving their residents. So I was impressed, yeah.
Nice.
It was
Cool.
fun. It was great to be there.
Cool. You're a rare politician that has a journalistic background. So I gotta ask, what do you think of the media landscape today? It's changed so much.
It's really changed. So I have my Bachelor of Journalism from Carleton University. I went into magazines and did that for 10 years before going out on my own. But I've been mostly in radio, television in the latter part of my career. But what's changed is social media, right? Social media now, everybody's a writer, everybody's a publisher. And the stories are 180 characters or whatever the tweets are now, and that's great for having diverse voices. It actually allows me to engage with a lot of residents really, really quickly and efficiently. It's a form of mass broadcast medium, but there's a lot of stuff on there that isn't helpful, and sometimes the conversation can devolve into personal attacks rather than sticking to policy issues. And so I actually have started on my own website, and I apply it to my social feeds, commenting guidelines. So I require people to be respectful, to stick to the issues, and if you don't do that, I'll delete your comment or I won't publish it. And if you're a constant abuser, I'll block you. Haven't had to do that regularly, or I'll block for a period and then unblock, just so folks get the message, up your game, behave, and you're absolutely welcome here. But my rule of thumb on social media is if you wouldn't say it in a town hall, if we have protocols for that, if we wouldn't allow you to get away with saying this in a council chambers, you can't say it on social either, on our platforms anyways. You can say whatever you like on yours, but for the tool to be effective, people have to feel welcomed to participate, and they're not welcome to participate if they're bullied or harassed for having a different perspective.
True. Darn keyboard warriors.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. It allows people, and it's funny because I've met some people who've said really inappropriate things online, and you meet them in person, they're nice and sweet people, and you're trying to reconcile. It's like, so try to be this person, the face-to-face person, also when you're sitting anonymously in many cases. And I think that's the other challenge with social. So one of my rules on my own website is you can't comment anonymously. You have to give your name, and not just part of your name, you have to give your full name. If you're not willing to stand behind this comment, then I'm not going to publish it.
Cool. I have to ask this question, okay? It's a tough question. It's probably the toughest question that you're going to answer today. We talk a lot about food on inhalton.com. Okay, I'm going to ask you, what are your favorite restaurants around town? And you don't have to answer just one. You can give me some of your favorite.
Lots. Okay. There are great restaurants all over the city. I can talk about my favorite foods.
Okay.
So, I'm a well-known oyster lover and burgeoning oyster connoisseur. So Jake's, of course, Oyster House is one of the best spots in Toronto. I do go to places in Toronto, but one of the best places to go in Burlington. We also have a wide array of vegan food and healthy food alternatives throughout the city, and there's a place downtown that really kind of put us on the map, which is all plant-based foods. Anybody with any food allergy can go into this store and have anything on the menu. So there's no peanut products, there's no wheat, it's gluten-free.
I've been there lots of times, actually.
Yeah, so it's Lettuce Love is the cafe, and then the folks that started it sold it, so it's under new management, but they also started Kelly's Bake Shop. So the same thing, but it's cupcakes and baked goods. And again, it's for people with food allergies, or out of principle don't eat animal products. And what I have heard from people in the community is that having that choice locally allows them to participate in events. So kids, I've heard parents tell me that kids who have food allergies will go there, get their cupcake, and then go to the party and discreetly take it out so they can participate in, because so much of what we do around social gatherings involves food. And you think about people with food allergies, they'd be excluded from that. So, so that's great. And I know people across the region, you and others, come from other cities to come to those restaurants. So we have everything. If you're a meat lover, we've got great steak shops. We've got the Lord Elgin. We've got we've got a lot of great restaurants in Burlington. Cool. Unique ones, as well as the bigger, more well-known.
Are you a foodie?
I guess you could say
that. Okay, so what's your... Okay,
I love food. Okay. Does that make me a foodie?
Yeah, that makes you a foodie. Favorite restaurant anywhere?
Anywhere? Oh, gee.
That's it.
Can I pick a European one?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You can pick Toronto.
Oh, the pizza in Italy is, you can't compare to that. But for my oysters, because that's my central food. I really do like Oyster Boy restaurant in Toronto, outside of Burlington. So yeah, I go there every year. So I just had my birthday in January, and so every year I go eat oysters, and you'll see my Instagram feed if you go every year in January.
We'll be Instagram friends.
You'll see my martini and oyster shot, and I do try to try a bunch of places, but if you do a good oyster and you do a good martini, I'm in. Cool. It's a good restaurant for me.
Nice. I know that there was a tribute to the beard guy from Walk Off the Earth. Unfortunately, he passed away. Tell us about the atmosphere of that concert, because I saw some pictures and it looked crazy.
It was an amazing, powerful, moving event, and it was bittersweet. the reason for the celebration was we lost this incredible musician, a father, a hockey coach, a friend. To many people, you know, the reason we were there was just heartbreaking. We lost him too soon, and but the fact that the community came together to grieve together, but also really to celebrate what he contributed to music in Burlington, but really globally. You know, they had international reach, and you know, one of the things I said when I kicked off the tribute was whenever he was interviewed by a journalist about where he was from, he was tempted to say Toronto, because everybody knows where Toronto is, but he never did. He always said Burlington. And be like, oh, where's Burlington?
Yeah.
And he would explain, but he was very proud of Burlington, and he was very proud of our music scene. And of course, we have the largest music festival, free music festival in the country. Sound of Music, it's won multiple awards, and Walk Off the Earth played there before they were big, and they played there after they were big. You know, they never forgot about us, and they always came back to their hometown. And he would, you know, Mike was so hometown proud, and so we wanted to come together as a community to celebrate that. So that was the mood. It was one of celebration. It was one of just thankfulness for the gift that he gave us while he was with us, and also a profound sense of loss and grief. And you know, there's a reason why you want to share those moments, right? We come together to get through those things, and we did that. And through that process, as the mayor, started to see my community really say, we have to do more. You know, so yes, we lowered the flags immediately, and people responded very favorably. Then they said we have to do a concert, and we did that. And you know, we were thinking sort of collectively, how can we do something that's more long-lasting? And I looked in my mayor's toolkit, and there really wasn't anything there. And I looked at what other municipalities do and discovered something called the Key to the City. And it's a program where you, the mayor, essentially can identify and present a key to the city to people who have contributed to the community, who put the community on the map. It sometimes is given to visiting dignitaries as a way of welcoming them to the city. And we didn't have that program. Lots of municipalities do. Toronto does. I'm not sure about Mississauga, but so I started one.
Nice.
I started the Key to the City program, and he's the first recipient. So we made that announcement at the tribute concert. It's been very well received by the community, and we will do a formal presentation because we didn't have a key.
Okay.
we wanted to do it right instead of to do it quickly. So we had 7 days to put it all together. So we thought, okay, we can at least announce the program, and then we will work with some local artists, make something that's really terrific, and put some criteria around our program, and then do a formal presentation to his, probably to his kids.
That's amazing.
On his behalf. So, and that's been really well received, and now I'm starting to get ideas for other people who we could give it to. So it's awesome. I love when the community wants to recognize regular citizens in our midst that just deserve some extra acknowledgement. We do have awards programs, but this is something that is really separate from and wouldn't be strictly within those categories. It just allows us another opportunity.
Well, so the thing that sticks out most, that you said he was a hockey coach too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, he just sounds like just a good guy.
He was a regular guy,
yeah,
right? He's a regular dude. That's what people tell me. I didn't know him personally, but you know, and that's partly why it was so heartbreaking. He didn't behave like this superstar. He was one of us.
Cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That was an amazing
yeah,
interview.
that was good.